In this video tutorial, I will show you how to knit the bucket hat with cables step by step from cast on through the whole knitting process and up to the blocking. The hat is knitted with Aran yarn on circular needles seamlessly. The yarn requirements, needles and available sizes are described below the video and in the pattern. Knitting of hat starts with the brim section. Make a slip knot and place it to your main needle. Now, using a spare circular needle, cable section or waste yarn, keeping it in your left hand, place working yarn over the top of the cable of spare needle, wrap the cable and start wrapping your right needle from front to back. This is your first stitch. Move yarn on below the cable and pick up it with the main needle. Now wrap the cable, moving yarn above your spare needle and then wrap it around your main needle. Now move yarn below your cable or your waste yarn and pick up another stitch with main needle. Now move yarn on the top above the cable and wrap your main needle again. And now you need to repeat those steps up to the point when you've got required quantity of stitches on your main needle. So you slowly wrapping main needle with the working yarn, picking it up above the cable or below the cable. So at the same time you are creating stitches on both needles. Here I'm making my last stitch, and as a last step I need to wrap my yarn around the cable of my spare needle and move it up. So you can see, as I started with the slip knot on my main needle, my last step is wrapping the cable of spare needle, and now I can knit my first row. So I knit through the back of my first stitch. You can see our stitches facing us with different sides or different loops. Now I need to knit the next stitch properly, and again the next stitch is facing us with the second loop, or with which is normally on the back, and so now I'm knitting it from the back loop and another stitch from through the front loop. So I'm knitting to my last stitch on my main needle, and then at the end of row I need to switch to knitting in the round. At the same time I need to control my stitches, making sure they are not twisted around my main needle. I will double check it at the end of this row. Please note that your spare needle need to be longer than the main needle. It could be next size. For example, if you're knitting with main needle, which is 60 centimeters, you can take 80 centimeters spare needle, or maybe even 100, so you can make sure all stitches stay on place. I mean, second set of stitches stays on your spare needle. So here I'm knitting my last stitch, which is my slip knot, tighten it a little bit, and at this point I need to switch to knitting in the round. So I'm making sure that my stitches are not twisted, and I like doing this on the surface of my table. Now I'm placing end of round marker and start knitting next round. With knit stitch, and I'm knitting my next round. The first stitch can be a little bit tight, so make sure you can work it. So, and now I'm double checking that all my stitches are not twisted, and continue knitting in the round for 5 rounds, because our first row counted as 1 round. So now I'm finishing my round 5, and in next step I need to join my stitches on spare needle and on main needle. So I'm going to remove this marker for while working the next round. I'm moving my stitches to the end of spare needle. If you used the waste yarn for provisional cast on, you need to move all your stitches from this yarn to the spare needle. So now I need to fold my knitting piece in twice, wrong side facing inside, and now I will need to knit 1 stitch from main needle and 1 stitch from my spare needle together. So to make my life easier, I'm going to move the first stitch to my main needle, because the first stitch is a bit tight. So, and I'm going to knit those stitches together. So this is my first stitch from the spare needle, which I moved to my main needle, and I knit 2 stitches together. Make sure that other stitches from your spare needle stays on. So now I'm going to rotate my first stitch on my spare needle, because as you can see, because of the way how we casted on stitches, some stitches are facing us with the wrong loop. So I'm going to insert my right needle into the first stitch on my main needle, then into the first stitch on my spare needle, and knit those two stitches together, slip them off the needle. My next stitch on spare needle is facing with the correct side, so I insert my right needle into the first stitch on my main needle, then into the first stitch on my spare needle, and knit them together. So my next stitch need to be turned again. So I turn it and work 2 stitches together again. And now I need to repeat those steps until I've got all stitches worked or knitted. So actually I can work my stitches without turning them, and I'm showing you how to do this. So my next stitch is on my needle and it's placed correctly, so I knit this together with the stitch on my main needle. Now I can insert my right needle into the first stitch on my main needle, then I insert it from another side, like if knitting for the through the back loop. I will show you again after next stitch. So I insert my right needle into the first stitch on main needle, normally as to knit, and into the first stitch on my spare needle through the back loop, and work those stitches together. So you can see again. So I'm finishing my working 2 set stitches together. Here my last set of stitches, and in next round I need to start working in 1 by 1 ribbing, double checking that my stitches are not twisted. I'm placing my end of round marker back, taking another strand of yarn, because to keep the shape of the brim we need to work the brim in ribbing with 2 strands of yarn, and making sure that we're working those stitches tight enough. So I'm starting working in ribbing with 2 strands of yarn held together. At this point you need to control your tension properly. So continue working brim in ribbing up to the specified length for your size. You can knit the ribbon slightly longer if you want, or a little bit shorter. make sure you are knitting your brim quite tight in order to keep its shape perfectly. You can see my brim is quite easy to shape and quite flexible. I completed my brim, and my next step, I need to decrease 35 stitches as I'm working on child size. There are 3 ways to decrease stitches for the next round. You can work all decreases as knit 2 together. You can work all decreases as slip slip knit. You know that knit 2 together and slip slip knit are very similar decreases. Or you can combine those 2 types of decreases. For example, I love the third method because in this case you decrease stitches in pattern. For example, if your first stitch on your left needle is purl stitch and you need to decrease one of those stitches to keep stitches in pattern, you need to knit those stitches together. If your next stitch on your needle would be knit stitch, to keep stitches in pattern, it is better to follow with slip slip knit decrease. And another thing what I wanted to mention for decreases for ribbon, as we knitted this ribbon on smaller needle with the 2 strands of yarn held together, it might be a bit difficult to work knit 2 together decreases. To make the life easier, please use the following method. Knit 1 stitch, then move the stitch back to left needle and slip the next stitch over the knitted stitch. Now move the stitch back to the right needle. As you can see, we just done knit 2 together decrease, but the easier way. We just followed the steps for slip slip knit, but in the other direction. So I'm going to follow instructions for child size and decrease stitches in pattern. So now I'm knitting 3 stitches. And now I need to knit 2 stitches together. But because my next stitch on the left needle is knit stitch, I'm going to decrease 1 stitch as slip slip knit. So now I need to knit 2 stitches and work knit 2 together again, and again I'm going to slip slip knit decrease. So now I need to knit 3 stitches and work knit 2 together decrease, and I'm going to follow the method which I showed you earlier. I'm going to knit 1 stitch, move it back to the left needle and slip the stitch over, and then move stitch back to the right needle. So continue in pattern to end of round. You can see following this method decreases are almost invisible. And we've got just round of staccato stitches. So continue in pattern and then start knitting body of the hat. So I've completed my decreasing round, and in next round I need to switch to bigger needles and start working in a main pattern for the hat body. I'm going to continue knitting body of my hat with just one strand of yarn. So I will remove marker for a moment, and I'm going to start my preparation round, and I will place stitch marker after every repeat. So I'm starting my repeat with purl stitch, then I need to knit 8 stitches for the cable, two purl stitches, and now I'm going to work the following 7 stitches in brioche rib. I need to make yarn over and slip the following stitch, and I will do this in one step. So I'm placing my right needle under the working yarn, keep yarn behind my left needle and slip the next stitch. So now I need to purl next stitch, I'm purling next stitch and slip the following stitch with yarn over again. So now I purl next stitch and slip next stitch with yarn over. So here my next and last slipped stitch with yarn over, double check, and now I need to purl one stitch and placing marker and starting the next repeat of the round. Purl one stitch, knit 8 stitches for the cable, purl 2 stitches, and now I'm going to work brioche rib over 7 stitches. I slip 1 stitch with yarn over, purl 1 stitch, slip 1 stitch with yarn over, purl 1 stitch, slip 1 stitch with yarn over, purl 1 stitch and slip 1 more stitch with yarn over. Purl 1 stitch and placing another marker. I'm going to continue to the end of round. So here I completed the preparation round, and I'm placing my end of round marker back to my needle. In the next round I need to continue working in pattern. I will work 1 purl stitch, row 1 of cable chat, and it's knit row, two purl stitches. And now I need to work the following 8 stitches in brioche rib. So here I've got yarn over and slipped stitch, and in this round I need to knit those stitches together, and now I need to slip purl stitch with the yarn over. So I'm going to work the same way as for previous round. I make yarn over, wrapping my right needle and keeping yarn behind the left needle and slipping next stitch purlwise. Now I'm knitting another stitch with yarn over, and now I'm slipping the following purl stitch together with yarn over. Knit 2 stitches and slip the following purl stitch with yarn over. Knit 2 stitches together, purl 1, and here my first completed repeat of the round. Now I'm going to repeat those steps for the next repeat without explanation, just showing you. So now in the round 2 we need to work the row 2 of cable chat, and then work the second row of brioche rib. So I'm starting my round with purl 1, knit 8 stitches for the cable, purl 2 stitches, and now I need to work brioche rib over 7 stitches for the child size, and I need to slip the first stitch with yarn over. You can do yarn over and then slip stitch. Result will be the same, but for me it's easier to do those 2 steps in one go. So I slip next stitch with yarn over, and now I need to purl next stitch with its yarn over. So I slip 1 stitch with yarn over and purl the following stitch with yarn over. Again slip 1 stitch with yarn over and purl the following stitch. Slip the last stitch, purl 1 stitch, and working the second repeat of the round. So continue in pattern to end of round, and then continue knitting the body of hat for your size, repeating those last 2 rounds for the brioche rib and following cable chat for the cable part of the repeat. So I completed 3 rounds of my hat, and in the round 4 I need cross cables, and I will show you how I do this without cable needle. So I need to pull one stitch, and now I need to work right crossed cable over the following 4 stitches. So what I'm going to do, I'm slipping 4 stitches to my right needle. Now I'm approaching 2 first stitches from the back with left needle, insert left needle onto those stitches, slip all stitches of the needle, and pick up a second set of stitches with my right needle and slip them back to left needle. So my stitches crossed and I'm ready to knit them. And I knit those 4 stitches. Now I need to cross the next 4 stitches to the left. And I'm going to slip 2 stitches of the left needle with help of my right needle, slip those stitches of the right needle, hold them with my thumb and slip the next 2 stitches to left needle, or slip next 2 stitches to right needle, and now with help of right needle move set of first 2 stitches back to left needle. And now I need to slip another 2 stitches, the first set of stitches back to the left needle, and knit all stitches. So you can see my stitches are crossed without cable needle. Now I'm going ahead and knitting 7 stitches in brioche rib. After the body of hat is knitted up to specified length, you need to switch to smaller needles and knit 3 rounds. But please make sure that you measure your length of hat's body correctly, starting from the top edge of the brim. Also, make sure that you knit it a few rounds after last cross of cables, otherwise transition from the body of hat to crown section would be not so straight and smooth. Also, it would be difficult to work the next step if you would have crossing cables too close to the edge of hat's body. After you completed your 3 rounds, you need to start working a horizontal tack as follows. With right needle, you need to pick up the stitch below the next stitch on your left needle 2 rows below. So you're approaching this stitch from the bottom, from wrong side. Pick it up with your right needle and then place it to your left needle, and now you need to knit 2 stitches together. Again, you need to pick up 1 stitch below from the wrong side of your knitting with your right needle, place the stitch to your left needle and knit 2 stitches together. Make sure you are not knitting those stitches too loose. I would recommend you to tighten your working yarn after every stitch little bit. Now you need to continue those steps up to end of your round. This horizontal line or tag would create a beautiful transition from hat's body to crown section. Continue to end of round. After you completed the round 1, you need to start working on decreases for crown section. Start working round 2 and decreasing stitches. Then work round 3 for size adult L only, and then continue working from round 4 to the end of pattern for all sizes, including size adult L. So I'm working on size child, and I need to decrease 5 stitches in the first decreasing round or in the round 2. All decreases for crown shaping should be made as knit 2 together. Remember to switch to double pointed needles when the quantity of stitches reduced and it's not so easy and comfortable knitting with circular needles anymore. So after all decreases are completed, we need to close this hole on the top of the crown of hat, and for this I'm going to cut quite long end of yarn, and using my tapestry needle I'm going to pass my yarn through all stitches twice. So how I'm doing this? I'm passing my tapestry needle with yarn through the half of my stitches first. Making sure it's not twisted. Here I'm leaving a loop of yarn, and now I'm passing through the second half of stitches. I'm going to use this loop to make a knot So I pull the thread through the stitches once. Now I'm making loop from another side. It's beginning of my round. So I've got one loop here and one loop here from another side. So now I can remove all my needles. And you can see I've got 2 loops plus 1 yarn end. Now I'm going to move my yarn inside of my hat. And from wrong side I'm going to tighten my yarn, closing the hole, and I'm making a knot. I'm going to cut the longer end and leaving this yarn here, just in case I decide to unravel this hat or adjust something. So you can see my hat is ready, and now I need to block it. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I can't wait to see your Winterberry Bucket Hat soon. Let me know what you think about this video, and I hope to see you in my next video tutorials. Happy knitting!